Leaders and Loyalty by Dag Heward-Mills. Loyalty, in Dag Heward-Mills' stark and urgent vision, is not merely a virtue, it is the invisible architecture that holds ministries, organizations, and destinies together, and its absence is the silent force that destroys them from within. Written with pastoral intensity and practical bluntness, Leaders and Loyalty reads less like theory and more like a survival manual for leadership in a world where betrayal is inevitable but preventable. Leaders and Loyalty argues that loyalty is the central force behind sustainable leadership, organizational growth, and spiritual stability. Drawing heavily on biblical narratives, historical examples, and personal ministry experiences, Heward-Mills frames loyalty as both a spiritual discipline and a practical leadership strategy. He contends that disloyalty, not external opposition, is the primary cause of failure in churches and organizations. The book introduces structured frameworks such as laws, statutes, tests, and manifestations of loyalty to help leaders recognize and cultivate it. The author emphasizes that loyalty begins at the top. Leaders must demonstrate faithfulness to earn it from followers. He explores how disloyalty develops gradually through attitudes like suspicion, divided allegiance, and offense. Heward-Mills also explains how expansion depends on loyalty, since leaders must trust others with authority. He illustrates these ideas through biblical figures like David, Solomon, and Judas, alongside historical personalities and contemporary ministry examples. The book warns that disloyalty often masquerades as righteousness, making it especially dangerous. It outlines methods for identifying, preventing, and addressing disloyalty without destroying organizations. Heward-Mills presents loyalty not as blind obedience but as principled faithfulness rooted in respect and shared vision. He concludes by portraying loyalty as a reflection of divine character, pointing to Christ and God the Father as ultimate examples. Overall, the thesis is clear: loyalty determines whether leadership thrives, survives, or collapses. Chapter 1. If Only You Knew. The opening chapter establishes the central premise: disloyalty is Satan's primary weapon against leaders and churches. Heward-Mills describes loyalty as a spiritual battlefield, where deception is the enemy's main tactic. He emphasizes that many leaders fail not because of external persecution but because of internal betrayal. Using biblical references and visionary imagery, he illustrates how division, gossip, and accusation weaken organizations. The chapter also introduces the idea that disloyalty is often subtle and unrecognized until damage is done. This foundation frames loyalty as both a spiritual and organizational necessity, setting the tone for the entire book. Chapter 2. 10 Laws of Loyalty. This chapter introduces 10 governing principles explaining how loyalty functions. Heward-Mills argues that loyalty originates with leaders and flows downward. He emphasizes that expansion depends on loyal followers, since leaders cannot personally oversee everything. The author also explains how loyalty reproduces itself through example and culture. Conversely, disloyalty spreads quickly when modeled by leadership. Through business and ministry stories, he demonstrates that loyalty often matters more than competence. The chapter presents loyalty as a predictable force governed by identifiable patterns rather than random personality traits. Chapter 3. 5 Statutes of Loyalty. Here, Heward-Mills moves from general laws to specific statutes, practical behavioral rules defining loyal conduct. He explains how loyalty requires respect, restraint, and discipline, particularly in speech. The chapter emphasizes protecting leadership authority even during disagreement. It also addresses how loyalty involves maintaining unity and avoiding actions that undermine collective purpose. Heward-Mills highlights the importance of internal attitude, not just outward compliance. This chapter gives concrete behavioral markers that distinguish loyal individuals from disloyal ones. Chapter 4. The Rewards of Loyalty. This chapter focuses on the benefits of loyalty for individuals and organizations. Heward-Mills argues that loyal people gain trust, responsibility, and advancement. He uses biblical examples to show how loyalty leads to promotion and blessing. The chapter also explains how loyalty creates stability and long-term influence. Importantly, he portrays loyalty as personally beneficial, not merely sacrificial. Readers see loyalty as an investment that produces tangible and intangible returns. Chapter 5. Adventures in Ghana. Using personal experiences from his ministry in Ghana, Heward-Mills illustrates loyalty in real-world contexts. He describes situations where loyalty strengthened ministry growth and others where disloyalty caused setbacks. These stories provide emotional realism, showing how loyalty issues affect relationships. The chapter also demonstrates the cultural and organizational dynamics surrounding leadership trust. It bridges abstract theory and lived experience. Chapter 6: Adventures in Nigeria. Similar to the previous chapter, this section recounts experiences in Nigeria to highlight loyalty challenges. Heward-Mills examines how loyalty affects cross-cultural leadership and church expansion. The stories illustrate both successes and failures related to trust and faithfulness. The chapter reinforces that loyalty principles apply universally regardless of location. Chapter 7: 3 Common Causes of Disloyalty. This chapter identifies root causes such as offense, pride, and misunderstanding. Heward-Mills explains how disloyalty develops gradually rather than suddenly. He emphasizes emotional triggers and relational breakdowns. The chapter also highlights how unresolved issues can grow into betrayal. Readers gain insight into prevention through early recognition. Chapter 8: The Timing of Disloyalty. Here, the author explains when disloyalty typically emerges, often during transitions or crises. He argues that loyalty is tested during difficulty, not comfort. The chapter shows how success and promotion can also trigger disloyalty. Timing becomes a predictable factor leaders must anticipate. Chapter 9: The Adventures of Julius Caesar. Using the historical story of Julius Caesar, Heward-Mills illustrates betrayal's devastating consequences. He examines leadership style and relational dynamics that contributed to Caesar's downfall. The chapter presents loyalty lessons drawn from political history. Chapter 10: The Adventures of Macbeth. Drawing from Shakespeare's character Macbeth, Heward-Mills explores ambition and betrayal. He uses literary analysis to show how disloyalty corrupts individuals and destroys leadership structures. The chapter connects fictional narrative to real leadership principles. Chapter 11: The 3 Tests of Loyalty. This chapter outlines situations that reveal true loyalty, such as correction, distance, and disagreement. Heward-Mills argues that loyalty cannot be assumed, it must be proven. These tests help leaders identify trustworthy individuals. Chapter 12: 6 Manifestations of Disloyalty. The author identifies behavioral signs such as criticism, independence, and passive resistance. This chapter provides diagnostic tools for recognizing disloyalty early. This chapter summarizes foundational concepts underlying loyalty behavior. Heward-Mills reinforces core ideas introduced earlier. Chapter 14: The Loyalty of Christ. Christ is presented as the ultimate example of loyalty through obedience and sacrifice. The chapter frames loyalty as a spiritual virtue rooted in divine nature. Chapter 15: The Loyalty of the Father. This chapter emphasizes God's faithfulness as a model for leaders. Heward-Mills presents loyalty as an eternal attribute of divine character. Chapter 16: 7 Methods for Dealing with Disloyalty. Heward-Mills provides practical leadership strategies for handling betrayal constructively. He emphasizes wisdom, firmness, and prevention. Chapter 17: 3 Basic Facts about Loyalty. The book concludes by summarizing loyalty's essential truths and importance. It reinforces loyalty as a leadership necessity. The book's numbered framework creates clarity, order, and memorability. Readers can easily recall and apply concepts. Heward-Mills demonstrates deep psychological understanding of leadership relationships. He captures emotional realities like trust, betrayal, and ambition. Major themes include faithfulness, leadership responsibility, organizational stability, human pride, spiritual warfare. The style is direct, vivid, and sermon-like. It combines theological authority with practical instruction. The pacing is steady, balancing teaching and storytelling. Few leadership books focus so intensely on loyalty as the central leadership principle. The book strongly favors loyalty but gives less attention to situations where dissent may be necessary. Compared to Spiritual Leadership by J. Oswald Sanders, this book focuses more narrowly on loyalty. Compared to the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell, Heward-Mills provides deeper focus on faithfulness rather than influence broadly. Leaders and Loyalty is a powerful, practical, and thought-provoking leadership book. It is especially valuable for leaders managing teams and organizations. Rating: 9/10. Highly recommended.